From Phil Collins nearly becoming a Boogaloo instead of Genesis's drummer to Martha Raye's secret life as a decorated war hero, this psychedelic children's show was stranger than its talking grapes and flying teenagers ever suggested. Discover the bizarre auditions, abandoned Star Trek sets, and tragic miscommunication that killed both a second season and a movie deal. Fact 1. Phil Collins almost changed rock history. Imagine a world where Phil Collins never became the legendary drummer and frontman of Genesis. That alternate reality nearly happened because of a children's show about flying teenagers living in a magical forest. In the spring of 1970, over 5,000 hopeful young performers showed up to audition for the 4 lead roles in the Bugaloos, a new Saturday morning series from producers Sid and Marty Krofft. Among the massive crowd of aspiring actors were 2 future music industry icons who made it all the way to the final round of callbacks. Phil Collins, then a relatively unknown 19-year-old musician, was one of 3 finalists competing for the role of IQ, the intellectual member of the Bugaloos band. Another finalist was John Reid, who would later become Elton John's longtime manager and a powerful force in the music business. Both men were incredibly close to landing the part, but ultimately the role went to John McIndoe, a British actor who fit the producer's vision slightly better. Just a few months later, in August of 1970, Collins received a phone call that would change his life forever. Genesis needed a new drummer, and Collins got the job. He would go on to become one of the most successful artists in rock history, selling over 100 million records and winning 8 Grammy Awards. If he had been cast in the Bugaloos instead, the entire trajectory of progressive rock might have been completely different. Fact 2. The villain was a war hero. Martha Raye brought villainous energy to her role as Benita Bizarre, the jealous jukebox-dwelling antagonist who spent every episode trying to capture the Bugaloos. But her real-life heroism was far more impressive than anything her character ever attempted on screen. While most Americans knew her as a comedic actress and singer, Raye spent 9 years of her life entertaining troops in Vietnam, often putting herself in genuine danger to boost morale for soldiers serving in combat zones. Her dedication to military personnel went far beyond typical celebrity USO tours. Raye made numerous trips into active war zones, sometimes sleeping in makeshift barracks and eating military rations alongside the troops. Her commitment was so extraordinary that she received one of the highest civilian honors in the United States, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, in recognition of her service. The military community embraced her as one of their own, making her an honorary Green Beret and later promoting her to the rank of honorary lieutenant colonel. When Raye passed away in 1994, she wasn't given a typical Hollywood funeral. Instead, she was buried with full military honors at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, a rare tribute that reflected the deep respect the armed forces had for her decades of selfless service. The woman who played a comically evil villain spent much of her real life as a genuine American hero. Fact 3. Star Trek's bridge was their hangout. The Hollywood backlot where the Bugaloos filmed was filled with remnants of television history, but one piece of sci-fi legacy became an unofficial clubhouse for the show's cast. Sitting directly behind the set piece that served as Benita Bizarre's jukebox home was the actual bridge from the USS Enterprise, the iconic starship from the original Star Trek series, which had ended its run just 1 year earlier in 1969. The detailed command center, complete with captain's chair and control panels, had been abandoned on the lot and was simply left there gathering dust. The male cast members of the Bugaloos discovered this treasure trove of science fiction history during production and quickly adopted it as their favorite place to relax between takes. While the female cast members had their own areas to unwind, the guys would slip behind Benita's jukebox set and climb aboard the Enterprise bridge whenever they had downtime. They would sit in the captain's chair, press the non-functional buttons on the consoles, and essentially live out the fantasy of being Starfleet officers while dressed in their colorful Bugaloos costumes with antennae and wings. It was a surreal collision of 2 very different television worlds, where psychedelic children's entertainment met serious science fiction, all happening just a few feet apart on the same studio lot. Fact 4. Theme song writers created Killing Me Softly. The catchy, upbeat theme song that opened every episode of the Bugaloos came from the minds of two extraordinarily talented songwriters who would go on to create some of the most memorable music in American pop culture. Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel wrote the Bugaloos theme in 1970, crafting lyrics about flying through the air and living in Tranquility Forest that perfectly captured the show's whimsical spirit. But just 3 years later, this same songwriting team collaborated with singer Lori Lieberman to create something completely different. They wrote Killing Me Softly with his song, a deeply emotional ballad that became one of the most celebrated songs of the 1970s. Roberta Flack's version won the Grammy Award for Record of the Year and Song of the Year in 1974, and the song has been covered by countless artists ever since, including a hugely successful hip-hop-influenced version by the Fugees in 1996. Fox and Gimbel didn't stop there. They became the go-to team for television theme songs throughout the 70s and 80s, writing the instantly recognizable themes for Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Wonder Woman. Their ability to create both children's television jingles and Grammy-winning emotional ballads demonstrated remarkable versatility. The same musical minds that told us to come along and fly with a Bugaloo also gave us one of the most hauntingly beautiful songs about the power of music itself. Fact 5. First Croft show shot on videotape. The Bugaloos marked a significant turning point in how Sid and Marty Krofft produced their television shows, though not necessarily in a positive way for the show's visual quality. Up until this production, the Krofft brothers had filmed their fantastical children's series on traditional film stock, which gave their colorful costumes and imaginative sets a certain cinematic richness and depth. However, when they began developing the Bugaloos in 1970, they made the decision to switch to videotape for the first time in their production history. This wasn't an artistic choice, but rather a financial one, as videotape was considerably less expensive to use than film, allowing them to stretch their budget further and potentially produce more episodes for the same amount of money. The trade-off was immediately visible to anyone who compared the Bugaloos to earlier Krofft productions like H.R. Pufnstuf. Videotape had a flatter, less dynamic look that made the bright colors appear slightly washed out and gave the entire show a cheaper, more soap opera-like quality that was common to videotape productions of that era. The electronic medium also had less flexibility in terms of lighting and didn't capture the depth and texture of the elaborate costumes and sets in quite the same way that film did. Despite these visual limitations, the cost savings proved worthwhile for the Krofts, and they would continue using videotape for many of their subsequent productions throughout the 1970s. Fact 6. Original Mouseketeer played the villain's henchman. Inside the elaborate costume of Funky Rat, one of Benita Bizarre's bumbling henchmen, was a performer with serious Disney credentials and decades of show business experience. Sharon Baird brought the oversized rodent character to life with her physical comedy skills and precise movement work, but most viewers had no idea they were watching someone who had been a household name 15 years earlier. From 1955 to 1958, Baird was one of the original Mouseketeers on the Mickey Mouse Club, appearing alongside future stars like Annette Funicello and performing in countless musical numbers, comedy sketches, and adventure serials. She was one of the 9 original Mouseketeers who helped launch the groundbreaking children's variety show that became a cultural phenomenon and made Disney a major player in television production. After her time at Disney ended, Baird continued working steadily in Hollywood as a dancer, actress, and puppeteer, developing skills that made her perfect for the physically demanding work required by Sid and Marty Krofft. The Krofft brothers frequently hired talented performers to bring their elaborate costumed characters to life, and Baird's combination of dance training, comedic timing, and experience performing for children made her an ideal choice for Funky Rat. The role required her to move expressively inside a bulky costume while hitting precise marks for the camera, skills she had developed over years of professional performance. It was a long journey from wearing mouse ears and singing wholesome Disney songs to playing a scheming rat working for a villainous jukebox witch, but Baird's professionalism shined through in both roles. Fact 7. George Barris built their butterfly car. The Bugaloo Buggy wasn't just a colorful prop that appeared in the show's opening credits. It was a fully functional custom vehicle created by one of the most legendary car designers in Hollywood history. George Barris had already made his name building some of the most iconic vehicles ever seen on screen, including the original Batmobile for the 1960s Batman television series and the Munster coach for the Munsters. When Sid and Marty Krofft needed a vehicle that could match the whimsical, psychedelic aesthetic of the Bugaloos, they turned to Barris to bring their vision to life. The result was a truly unique automobile that looked like a giant butterfly on wheels. Barris didn't just paint butterfly patterns on a standard car, he engineered working mechanical wings that could actually flap up and down as the vehicle moved, creating the illusion that this oversized insect might lift off the ground at any moment. The attention to detail extended throughout the entire vehicle, which was equipped with 4 separate telephone handsets, so each member of the Bugaloos band could supposedly communicate while riding together. Even more impressively, the car featured 4 individual stereo systems, presumably so each Bugaloo could listen to their own music during their travels through Tranquility Forest. The Bugaloo Buggy represented everything that made early 1970s children's television so wonderfully excessive and imaginative, a time when producers would commission world-famous designers to create elaborate custom vehicles for shows that would only run for 17 episodes. It was pure automotive fantasy brought to life by a master craftsman. Fact 8. A miscommunication killed Season 2. The Bugaloos seemed positioned for success after its first season wrapped in December of 1970, with decent ratings and plans already in motion for both a second season of episodes and a feature film deal with Columbia Pictures. Sid and Marty Krofft were eager to continue the series and had been in discussions with the studio about expanding the property beyond television. However, a critical breakdown in communication between the producers and their young British cast members would end up destroying both opportunities almost overnight. When production wrapped for the holiday season, the 4 lead actors, John McIndoe, Wayne Larriea, John Philpott, and Caroline Ellis, made plans to return home to England to spend time with their families. From their perspective, this seemed like a reasonable decision, given that filming had concluded and no specific dates had been set for resuming production. The Krofft brothers, however, expected the actors to remain in Los Angeles and be available for immediate recall when the second season was greenlit, and they had apparently not made this expectation crystal clear to the cast. By the time everyone realized the miscommunication had occurred, the actors were already back in England, and the window of opportunity had closed. The Columbia Pictures movie deal fell apart not only because of the cast availability issues, but also because the studio itself was facing severe financial problems and declared bankruptcy around the same time. What should have been a straightforward hiatus between seasons turned into a series of unfortunate circumstances that ended the Bugaloos permanently after just one 17-episode season. Fact 9. Over 5,000 hopeful Bugaloos auditioned. Finding the right 4 performers to play flying teenage rock stars required one of the most extensive casting searches in children's television history. When Sid and Marty Krofft announced they were holding auditions for the Bugaloos in the spring of 1970, young actors and actresses from across the United States and beyond showed up hoping to land one of the coveted lead roles. More than 5,000 hopefuls walked through the door, each dreaming of becoming the next children's television star. The competition was fierce because the role requirements were demanding and specific. Unlike typical acting auditions where performers might only need to read lines from a script, everyone trying out for the Bugaloos had to demonstrate competency in 3 separate disciplines: acting, singing, and dancing. The Krofft brothers needed performers who could convincingly deliver dialogue and character, carry a tune well enough to perform the show's numerous original songs, and execute choreographed dance routines while wearing elaborate costumes with antennae and wings. Each audition became a mini performance as young actors sang, danced, and acted their hearts out, trying to prove they had the complete skill set necessary to bring these unusual characters to life. The casting process took weeks as producers narrowed down the massive pool of candidates through multiple rounds of callbacks and screen tests. Ultimately, 4 talented British performers who had exactly the right combination of skills and chemistry with each other were selected from the thousands who auditioned. But the sheer scale of the initial casting call demonstrated just how appealing the opportunity was to young performers at the time. Fact 10. They actually charted on Billboard. The Bugaloos weren't just fictional characters on a television show, they also existed as a real musical act that released actual records through Capitol Records in 1970. The songs featured on the show were professionally recorded and released both as a full-length album and as individual singles, giving young fans the opportunity to listen to Bugaloo's music even when the show wasn't airing. One of these singles, a song called For a Friend, actually managed to gain enough radio airplay and sales to appear on Billboard magazine's music charts. On December 18, 1970, the song showed up on a chart called Bubbling Under the Hot 100, which tracked songs that were gaining popularity but hadn't quite broken into the main Hot 100 chart yet. For a Friend reached position number 118, which might not sound impressive compared to top 10 hits, but it represented genuine commercial success for a novelty act from a children's television show. Most Saturday morning television series that featured musical performances never came anywhere close to charting on Billboard, even on the lower tier charts. So the fact that the Bugaloos managed this achievement demonstrated that their music had appeal beyond just kids watching the show. The song's chart appearance proved that the combination of catchy songwriting by Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel and the genuine musical talent of the 4 lead performers had created something with actual pop music credibility, however modest. It remains a unique distinction in the history of Sid and Marty Krofft's productions. Very few of their other musical television shows could claim their characters had Billboard chart success as actual recording artists. Fact 11. The show never aired in its star's home country. One of the strangest ironies surrounding the Bugaloos was that the show featured 4 British actors playing American characters living in a magical forest, yet audiences in Britain had virtually no opportunity to watch their own countrymen's work. John McIndoe, Wayne Laryea, John Philpott, and Carolyn Ellis traveled across the Atlantic Ocean to star in an American Saturday morning television series that would be broadcast to millions of children throughout the United States. But when they returned home to England after production wrapped, they couldn't easily share their work with friends and family. The show was not picked up for widespread distribution across British television networks the way many American programs were during that era. Only 2 regional stations, Yorkshire Television and Tyne Tees Television, decided to acquire the broadcasting rights and add the Bugaloos to their programming schedules. Even then, these stations didn't give the show a prominent time slot, instead airing episodes at lunchtime on Saturdays starting in late 1971 and continuing into early 1972. This meant that only viewers in specific regions of Northern England had the chance to see the show, and even those lucky enough to live in the coverage areas had to be watching television during the middle of the day on weekends, a time when many families were out of the house. The 4 stars of the show had achieved something remarkable by landing lead roles in an American television production, but they couldn't fully share that achievement with their home country because the show simply wasn't available to watch for the vast majority of British viewers. Fact 12. The Krofts initially opposed the laugh track. A defining characteristic of the Bugaloos that many viewers found annoying was its prominent laugh track, the recorded audience laughter that played after nearly every joke and pratfall throughout each episode. This audio addition might seem like an obvious choice for a comedy show, but it was actually something that Sid and Marty Krofft actively fought against, including during production. The brothers believed that children watching the show were smart enough to know when something was funny without needing canned laughter to tell them when to react. They felt the laugh track was insulting to young viewers' intelligence and would make the show feel more artificial and less immersive, taking audiences out of the magical world of Tranquility Forest by constantly reminding them they were watching a staged production. However, the Krofts didn't have final say over every creative decision. Cy Rose, who served as the show's executive producer and had significant influence over the final product, disagreed strongly with the brothers' position. Rose held the belief which was common among television executives at the time, that children needed audio cues to guide their responses to comedy. He thought that without a laugh track telling kids when jokes had been made, young viewers might not understand the humor or know how they were supposed to feel during comedic moments. Rose insisted that the laugh track be added despite the Crofts' objections, and his position as executive producer gave him the authority to make that decision stick. The result was a compromise where the Crofts' creative vision was overridden by more traditional television thinking about what children's programming required to be successful. Fact 13. One album song never appeared on screen. When Capitol Records released the Bugaloos soundtrack album in 1970, fans who purchased the record expecting to hear all their favorite songs from the show made an interesting discovery. Mixed in among familiar tracks like the Bugaloos theme and other songs that had been performed on television was a track called Just the Memory Stays Around that nobody recognized from watching the show. That's because this particular song, despite being recorded by the cast and professionally produced for the official album release, never actually appeared in any of the 17 episodes that aired during the show's single season. The reasons why Just the Memory Stays Around was recorded but left unused remain unclear decades later. But this kind of situation wasn't uncommon in television production during that era. Producers often recorded more songs than they could fit into the available episodes, building up a library of material they could draw from as needed. Sometimes songs were cut from episodes during editing because scenes ran too long, or because the musical number didn't fit the flow of a particular story. Other times, songs were recorded with the intention of using them in future episodes that ended up never being produced. In the case of the Bugaloos, the decision to include Just the Memory Stays Around on the album, despite its absence from the show, gave it a strange status as an official Bugaloos song that existed only in audio form, never accompanied by the colorful costumes, sets, and choreography that brought other musical numbers to life on screen. Fact 14. Collective Soul covered the theme song. More than 2 decades after the Bugaloos went off the air, the show's theme song got an unexpected revival from a source nobody could have predicted in 1970. Collective Soul, a rock band from Georgia that had achieved mainstream success in the mid-1990s with hits like Shine and December, recorded their own version of the Bugaloos theme for a unique compilation album. The record was called Saturday Morning Cartoons Greatest Hits, and it was released in 1995 as a benefit album for the VH1 Save the Music Foundation, a charity dedicated to restoring music education programs in American public schools. The album featured alternative rock and grunge bands of the 90s covering theme songs from classic Saturday morning cartoons and children's shows from the 70s and 80s, creating a bridge between the childhood nostalgia of Generation X and the contemporary music scene. Collective Soul's take on the Bugaloos theme maintained the upbeat sing-along quality of the original, while adding their signature rock sound with heavier guitars and more powerful drumming. The compilation album also included contributions from other major acts like Liz Phair covering the Tra-La-La song from the Banana Splits, Sublime covering Hong Kong Phooey, and the Ramones covering Spider-Man, making it a surprisingly high-profile collection that introduced classic children's television music to a new generation of listeners who might never have heard of the Bugaloos otherwise. It was a strange full-circle moment where a forgotten psychedelic children's show from the early 70s became part of the alternative rock landscape of the 90s. Fact 15. Nickelodeon's 2017 reboot never materialized. Nearly half a century after the Bugaloos originally aired, Sid and Marty Krofft attempted to bring their flying teenagers back for a new generation of children. At Comic-Con in 2017, the Krofft brothers generated significant buzz by releasing a teaser trailer for a planned reboot of the series that would air on Nickelodeon, the cable network that had become synonymous with children's programming. The trailer suggested that the new version would maintain the colorful, whimsical spirit of the original while updating the production values and storytelling approach for modern audiences. Fans of the original show who had grown up watching the Bugaloos in the early 70s were excited by the prospect of introducing these characters to their own children and grandchildren, and there was genuine anticipation that Nickelodeon's involvement would give the property the budget and creative support it needed to succeed in the contemporary television landscape. However, those hopes were dashed less than a year later when Marty Krofft gave an interview in May of 2018, revealing that the reboot would not be moving forward. According to Krofft, Nickelodeon had commissioned a pilot episode to see how the concept would work with modern production techniques and sensibilities. But after reviewing the completed pilot, network executives decided not to pick up the series for a full season. The project was officially scrapped, leaving the 2017 teaser trailer as the only evidence that a 21st century version of the Bugaloos had ever been seriously considered. It was a disappointing conclusion to what could have been a triumphant return for characters that had been largely forgotten by mainstream popular culture for decades.